Okay, so in this video I'm going to show you how to do a repair on one of our beaded seat covers. This one happened to be cut by a key in a person's back pocket, and it just snagged on one of the lines, and it actually cut two of the lines in the corner, and so the beads were starting to come out, and so the lady asked if I could repair it, and I says, well, actually I'm going to be doing a video on how to repair a seat, and so it works out well. So there is quite a distance. Now there's various ways you can kind of repair these. The beads, you know, you can kind of string them together however you want, really. You know, you can kind of see that the lines don't run vertical and horizontal. They're kind of, you know, they go in a pattern, you know, in the corner of the beads, or each, when it passes through a bead, it usually turns right or left. The line does. And so what I'm going to do here in this case, so whenever you have beads that are coming out, that means you have two of the lines that are broken. So that means that we have four broken ends here to account for. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use these ends that are on this side closest to this end, and I'm going to tie on to each one of these, and then I'm going to snake them through to the other side, each one individually. And so what we do is we use a knot called an Albright knot, and so I'm going to show you how to do that here in a second. But for that, you kind of need at least, you know, probably six inches of line or so to tie on to. Yeah, so that's about 5 or 6 inches right there. So that'll be enough to tie on to on both. Well, this one's a little bit shorter, but you know, see, I've taken some beads out. We also have repair kits on the website if you've lost some beads. You know, you can fix them with the beads missing. That's not really an issue, but the beads do protect the line a little bit, so and give you, you know, structural support if you have the beads in there. But if you look on the website, we do have like kind of like a repair kit where it comes with 20 beads and 5 yards of line. Now if you just are needing fishing line, well, this is fishing line. It's essentially what it is. It's a monofilament nylon line. This stuff here is actually really good, strong stuff. It held up to our abrasion tests. It is I found this at Walmart, 150 yards for a couple dollars, I think it was. I can't remember exactly. But this is good stuff. So if you just want to do a repair and you've got all your beads, then you can just pick some of this stuff up at Walmart. Now, to do the line, to do the threading through, I recommend cutting off about a yard piece at a time, and work with that. You know, you can work with longer pieces, but it's just kind of, you're pulling the line through the beads. So it's kind of a trade-off. You can take more time to pull the lines through the beads, or you can have more knots tied in your seat, however you want to work it. But now I'm going to show you how to do the Albright knot. So we'll do that right now. I'll show you. That's probably the most important part of doing these seats. It's a knot that was originally, or is mainly used by fishermen to tie, like fly fishermen, to tie on a leader on the end of their fly rod line. But it works very well on doing these seat covers, and that's strictly what we use. Now there's a knot called the modified Albright knot. I'm just going to show you how to do the Albright knot, but there's several videos on YouTube that show how to do it. There's some different techniques, or, you know, some people will say go around 10 times, some people will say 4 times. I find that 6 to 8 times going around the line is sufficient. So what you do is you take, so this is the line that's broken off from the seat. You take and you loop that over, you know, probably 1.5 inches or so, and you're going to take your new line. This is that yard piece that I cut off, and I'm going to take the end of that and thread it down through, down towards, and you're probably going to thread about 6 inches or so through. And then now you've got all 3 lines. You've got the looped over line, the line going up, so you've got them all in your thumb and thumb and other finger. Now you're going to wrap the new line around all 3 lines, and you're going to do that 6 to 8 times. And then every time you wrap, if you can kind of slide your thumb and index finger over that wrap, it'll kind of keep those coils stacked nicely. And then when you pull the line together, you'll come out with a nice clean line, or a nice clean knot. So you just want to wrap it around. Now that's 3 times, I believe. 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now you're going to want to pay attention to which way that other line comes out of your loop. And so it's coming out from the back side. So I'm going to take the line that I just wrapped around, I'm going to feed the end of that through, coming out the same way as the other line is. And then I'm going to slowly kind of pull, because you want your coils to stack up so that they seat together on each other. So I'm slowly kind of pulling these lines apart using all 4 lines. I'm pulling them. Now, once it gets to a point, then you can just pull the 2 main lines and leave the loose ends, and that'll cinch down onto the knot. And so now you can see there's a nice coiled up knot there. Very strong, extremely hard to break this, so the line most likely will break before your knot. So once that's done, you can trim these loose ends, these tag ends off, and you can actually trim those really close to the knot. You don't want to, obviously don't want to cut your knot, but you can trim those off very close, and then you have a strong union, and you'll have an extra yard to work with of line. You know, and then when that yard runs out, then you just tie another piece on and just keep going. So now what I'm going to do is, if that knot, and like I said, if you didn't see how to do the knot or whatever, you can obviously rewind, or you know, if you want to have, some people use like a big rope and show you a little bit so it's in more definition. So yeah, I recommend Googling that. You might have to practice the knot a few times before you actually try to do it on the seat. It took me quite a few times to be able to get it down, and then eventually the main key is just making sure you have enough line to work with. If you're trying to work with a 3-inch piece of line on each end, it's going to be very difficult unless you have really small fingers. It's going to be difficult to make the knot. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you, I'm just going to snake the line through. Of course, I'm going to put the beads back in. So it's coming out of this bead here. So I'm going to put another bead on. You can see on these seat covers there's a pattern. You know, they kind of go like in little circles or squares, or however you want to term it. It's just usually 4 beads that are joined together, and then there's just a bunch of segments like that. So there's one. I just put 1 bead back in, and now I'm going to put another vertical bead back on, and I'm going to tie into this other side with this other horizontal, the top horizontal bead. And I'll speed it up here in a second after I do a few, just to show you how this goes about. So now there's 2 of the beads that I just taken out, and then I'm going to feed another one on. So essentially you're just making a snake. It started off here, it went in that vertical bead, and then went into the horizontal one on the bottom, put another bead on, went in through that one, and went into this horizontal top side bead. And you want to try to end up with these knots inside of a bead if possible. It looks like this one's going to work out that way. If it doesn't, like say for example that wasn't going to land, you can always circle back around and end up back where you were, but then you just end up with the knot in a different spot. So that's kind of a way to adjust where your knot falls. But then like I said, we've got 3 of the beads back in, and put a 4th one back in, and now we'll speed the video up just so that, you know, when I get to the other end, then I can kind of show you what goes on over there. Now actually I'm coming to the point where I'm crossing over the line that broke off. There is a lot of it left, and I'm just honestly going to leave that in there and just go in the spots where that is, and I'm going to go quite a ways in here, and then I'm actually going to go clear over to the other side and then tie it off. That line, there's really nowhere for it to go. If there's no pressure on it, it's not going to come out. I mean, it may kind of work its way out eventually, but it's not gonna, you're not gonna lose any beads because you're putting this new line inside of there. So I'm just gonna go over the top of it, and then we'll just snip it off so that you don't have those loose ends sticking out. This little tool is kind of handy. It's you can get a pack of like 4 of these looking things. They've got different ends on them, but this one here with the kind of curved end, I got this at Harbor Freight for a couple bucks for a 4-pack or something. So these are really handy if you are going to be doing a lot of work like this kind of thing. But now there's people that there's a lady last year that she asked me how these were strung together, and I just kind of told her, and she says, well, I'm going to string mine together over the winter. And so she took a couple hours each night and just totally redid her seat, or restrung the whole thing and left the old line in there, and that way she had double the strength. And, you know, all it is time on these. Once you do one, you realize how long they actually take. I mean, the average seat that we do takes about 12 hours to complete by the time we, you know, make the seat, and then we cut the beads out and do the tubing, string the tubing in. So I know the price seems high for a lot of you, but if you try to actually make one of these, you realize that there's a lot of labor involved. So that's why the price is so high. So anyway, I'm going to speed the video up again so you can just kind of realize that I'm just snaking this through. Okay, so I've actually came to the part where there's tubing. In this case, where we're actually stringing beads back together, that's kind of the structural side of things. And so in cases where you're going over the tubing, in a structural thing where the beads are actually held together, you want to go underneath the tubing when you cross the tubing. If you're actually tying the tubing in, say maybe you had a line break where the tube that holds the tubing in, then those lines are on top of the tubing to kind of hold it in place. Okay, so now I've gotten to the other side, and I'm going to now tie this line off on this side. So the best way to do that is you take the line that's coming out of this bead here, you take the line and you loop it underneath, and then there's the line that goes from the gray bead here over to the one that the line's coming out of. You wrap it around underneath the outside line and that little line there, and you'll leave about 2 inches of the loop, and then you just want to wrap it around about 6 times. 1, 2, similar to the Albright knot, but you don't pass through it first. You just wrap it around. 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so then after I'm through, I'm just gonna thread it through. Just make sure it's nice and stacked, so your coils are stacked. And I'm gonna pull on it so there's no slack. And then I'm just gonna slowly pull that down, and it's gonna cinch down and make a nice knot there. So now I've got a knot. It's tied off at the end here. I'm just going to thread this through this gray bead here, and just kind of pull that. I just pulled that knot inside there, and then you can just kind of run this excess through some of the other beads, and then that'll kind of hold that knot in place. I mean, it doesn't really matter, it's tied off, but for visual sakes or whatever, you just kind of you can now threading line through where these reinforcement ties are for the straps. Sometimes it can be a little bit tricky just because there's less room there, especially if you're trying to thread a knot through one of these sides. But that one kind of fell on top of that box, but so I'm just going to do this, and then I'm going to thread it through 2 more beads. Now this is again your loose end. And I'm just going to snip it off. Cut it off, and then that one will be finished. It's not wanting to cooperate and come through there. Alright, so that one's just there. So I'm just gonna, I got these little micro trimmers at Harbor Freight too for a few dollars. They're pretty handy. You could use, you can use scissors, you can use fingernail clippers, whatever. But okay, so that one's done. So we've got this other one back here. This was the other end that was on that side. So I'm just going to tie onto it as well with an Albright knot, and then I'm going to thread it through going the opposite direction that we just went with the other one. And then I'll also tie it off when we get over here. I'll probably tie it off on the other side. And then, like I said, these loose ones here, you can just trim them off. In fact, I'm going to do that right now. They're not going to go anywhere because they don't have any, since that new line's through there, there's no way for these to really come out. They may, I think they're just kind of in shape enough to where, the line's shaped to the curvature of the pattern that it's in. That line's going to stay there, and so there's really no reason to take it out. So that's why I'm just going to leave those ones there. I'll tie onto this one. So I'll just go over the Albright knot one more time here. And so you got your loop that you made with that loose end that was coming from the seat that broke off, or that was cut in this instance. Threading the new one through. Sometimes, usually I'll put that other end of the new line in my mouth or something to hold it kind of out of the way. In this case, I'm just going to put that spool of line on top of the end of it, so it's kind of, well, it keeps pulling off of there. So that kind of gets annoying because line doesn't usually like to stay straight. Okay, so I've got that. Got about 6 to 8 inches pulled through there, and I'm just going to wrap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, noticing that that line is coming out through this top. So I'm going to go around one more time and then come up through the top like the other one. And then I'm just going to kind of pull these lines. Again, this is a knot that takes some practice, but once you get it down, then you'll be a pro at it. So now I just pulled the two ends. Once, like I said, once it pulls to a certain point, then you can just pull on these main lines, is what I call them, pass-through lines. And then these are called tag ends. So I'm just going to cut the tag ends off. Cut them off short. Boom, got a nice strong line there, or strong joint. So again, now I'm going to pass through the opposite way. So it started off at this one here, so I'm going to pass through the beads. Now these were the ones that we just put in, so I'm going to go through the opposite way of the other one. So it's kind of like a crisscross pattern with what we just did. Now normally what you do in a case where if you were just stringing the seat together, once you got to that end, you wouldn't tie it off. You'd actually just kind of continue on. You'd just head back the other way. But since we had breaks to take care of, I just started them both from this end. So anyway, I'll just speed up the video and you can kind of see how it comes together. I mean, the seat's obviously already together, but you can see these beads here are slanted. But once you put the line through the other way, it straightens them out to where they're just vertical. So it's kind of interesting how it does it. The main thing with these beads is they just need to be tied in to the neighboring bead in some way, which makes it so that the line is passed through at least twice in each bead. So there's actually 1,435 beads that make each seat, and so that's 2,870 passes through a bead. So you can see why that takes a long time. But you know, some of you might have cross stitch or crocheted or something like that. It's similar to that. I mean, it's just some of those things are just tedious and take time, but it's not like it's hard or anything. It just takes time. So that's the main reason why the cost is where it is, because not only the beads cost money and whatnot, but the labor is the biggest charge to making these, because they're not machine made, they are handmade. So anyway, I'll speed the video up. I'll shut up now and speed the video up, and then show you how to tie it off again. Okay, so now it's through to the other end. I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the other one when I tied it off. I'm just going to loop it through. Now I don't have very much line here, so it's going to be a little bit more tricky, but as long as you can get it looped around. So remember, I passed around, I made the loop around the outside main line, and then this line that goes from this bead here to this one. I just looped it around there, and now I just went around that loop about 5 or 6 times there. Like I said, I don't have much line to work with. I could have tied more on to tie it off, but I figured, well, I could probably make it work with this little amount of line that's here. But so it also helps if you have some needle nose pliers or something to grab onto sometimes the ends. I'm just going to cinch that down. And that knot, that's a solid knot on there that's not going to come out. So I'm going to just push it through this side here, this bead here. I don't think this is where our other knot was, but it could be. So you may have a double knot inside of this bead, but it's not a big deal because the knot should be strong enough they won't break. But I'm almost thinking that is where that other knot is. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Alright, so this is a little bit shorter. So I'm just going to pretty much run it through a couple more beads here until it runs out. Like I said, we've got beads on the website that come as a repair kit, 20 beads and 5 yards of string for like $5 or something. You know, if you wanted to like make your own seat cover, we could probably put a kit together for you. I've been asked to do custom colors, so we're working on a couple of those, but we can't do those during the busy season. So if you want a custom one with different colors, we need to know now. So okay, so I'm just going to snip that little extra line off. Okay, the repair is finished. There's no way that's coming apart. I mean, at least anytime soon. So again, sorry the video was so long, but just kind of wanted to try to explain everything there was to know about repairs. Now, a lot of these have the brakes will, you know, it's hard to say where a brake will take place. Probably the most common place to have a brake is somewhere in here, because the way these situate on the seat, there's not any support in some of the seats the way they're curved. This kind of part here is almost suspended, and so if you put too much weight on that, all the weight is on the line. It's not even being helped out by the seat, so it just puts a lot of stress on the line right here. So that's why it's important never to kneel on the seat or whatever, or if you can, try to make it so that this part here touches the seat. But you do have to worry about a kink right in this horseshoe there. You got to worry a little bit about a kink, but since that's where the seat back meets the seat when it folds, you know, when it's on the seat. So anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to holler. I said if this is something that you don't want to even try to do, we do have the replacement seat covers on the website that you can just buy a brand new one if yours is inoperable. But this is a good way to make your seat last for several years. So anyway, thanks for watching, and stay cool out there.